Hello everyone, this is JPO, and today I'm joined with...
Jay.
And Christopher.
Yes, and we are podcast name in brackets, back with the monthly rendition of the Top 5 podcast. This month we are doing the Top 5 films of 2010. 2010 to me is a very important year of my life. Not particularly because of films. 2010, we had the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. That was like the first major sports tournament that I got interested in. It was also the year that I moved to the United States uh, for furlough there. I went to middle school for the first time. I became a teenager around that time. Uh, but I don't really think about films so much in that year. I think 2010 specifically, I'm like, oh, yes, television. This is really the year of television. There were a lot of shows that were either ending or about to end coming soon, such as the likes of like Lost, House MD, Smallville. Then you had like other stuff that were starting this whole new stuff going into the 2010s, like The Walking Dead. The next year we would bring us like Game of Thrones, and then we had like the peak of Breaking Bad. But it was also like the beginnings of like animated cartoons had like a heavy uh re I don't know, renewal in 2010s with stuff like Adventure Time, Regular Show, uh My Little Pony, so lots of like stuff that was seeding into what would become 2010s. But in films, let's talk about films. So 2010 films.
Yeah. I have the kind of opposite relationship with 2010 in that this was a big year for me in watching movies. I saw a lot of stuff in the theaters. This might have been the year of the most movies I had seen in theaters of any year up to this point. Maybe even for a few years after. There's a lot of things I'm recognizing here, even just in the top 10, like Toy Story 3, Alice in Wonderland. This is the first year that we have two billion-dollar movies in the top 10 of the box office. I saw both of those in theaters. I saw Despicable Me and How to Train Your Dragon. We also have Tangled in here, Iron Man 2, lots of sequels. Inception, though, also making its way onto the list here. Yeah, Christopher, how was this year for you in terms of movies?
In the year 2010, none of this mattered to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I was a sheltered little guy. I think like it's very interesting like looking back to see like wow, those are some big titles that have like stayed in the public consciousness since, and there are definitely some titles I really like that we'll talk about. I think the
Yeah, yeah.
movie I was probably most aware of was Despicable Me, and also 2010 was, I believe, either the year I moved to Korea or the year I lived the first full year in South Korea. Um, the title I was most familiar with was Despicable Me. Um, just uh, Minions are popular.
Yeah.
And
Right.
actually, one thing I thought was very interesting was the fact that the title in Despicable Me in South Korea was not Despicable Me. Oftentimes, there's like this like attempt to like Koreanize the American word. Like Inception isn't a great one, but like I'm just guessing. But Twilight could have been like "to y e light to" kind of thing. Um, but Despicable Me was super bad, super bad.
Oh.
The movie Super Bad, the American Super Bad, didn't get a theatrical release in Korea. From the research I did like a while ago, it got a physical release at some point, but yeah, so there wasn't a movie to get confused with in South Korea. So yeah, super bad.
That's funny. It's always interesting. I forget what it was. We had the DVD in Spanish, but I forget what the title was in Spanish. Um, but yeah, in terms of the best
Wait,
picture.
there
Oh
was one
yeah.
time I went to ugh, I forget what country, but one in South America or Latin America, and yeah, I remember like there was a Despicable Me movie releasing that at the time, and they had like an alternate title. I don't remember what it was. But yeah,
Yeah, I could probably find that. But yeah, in terms of the Oscars this year, this was actually the first Oscar year that I remember sort of following as it was happening and keeping track of, oh, what's going to win. Um, the King's Speech ends up winning Best Picture. We also have Inception showing up again. Um, this is the second year with 10 nominees, so I'm not going to walk through them all, but it is a pretty solid year in terms of films. Toy Story 3 becoming the third animated feature to get a Best Picture nominee. So far, there's hasn't been anything since then. Hopefully, someday soon we'll get that. I would like to see it. Social
Yeah.
Network, that was a critical favorite. Um, but yeah, good year for Best Picture. And then in terms of other awards, Uncle Boonmi, who can recall his past lives, wins the Palme d'Or. The Razzie goes to The Last Airbender. MTV Movie of the Year is The Twilight Saga Eclipse. So they're continuing their love for the Twilight franchise. And the Golden Lion goes to Sofia Coppola's forgotten film Somewhere, which I have actually seen. And yeah, it's interesting that people don't remember that one.
All right. Well, with that, why don't we get started with our number fives?
Yeah. So my number five is just mentioned MTV Movie of the Year winner, The Twilight Saga Eclipse. Um, as I was putting my list together, a lot of my favorites are going to be mentioned by John or Christopher, so I didn't put them on my own list. And this was of all of the things in my honorable mentions, this is the one that I felt the most like talking about today. So that is why it is on my list here. This is the third movie in the Twilight Saga. It is often considered the best by people who don't care much for the others. Now, I like the others, but yeah, this one is after the previous film, neither of the directors of the first two films wanted to return for this one. So Summit brings in horror director David Slade, who brings a sort of much needed sense of danger and tension to this one. This one's a little more action focused. I mean, as action focused as these Twilight movies get. It's a bit more angsty, a bit more exciting. Um, this is my least favorite of the books, but if you ask me on the right day, this might be my favorite of the movies. It reworks some of the icky stuff from the book to make it a little less icky, and just overall has like a really great style, some really phenomenal visuals. Like David Slade has a very good eye for these sort of big vistas and some fun horror imagery that's still staying within like the PG-13 Twilight style. There's a great score courtesy of Howard Shore, who of course did Lord of the Rings,
Mm-hmm.
among many others. And this feels very similar to his Lord of the Rings scores in ways that I very much enjoyed. And this also has like some of the best, if you are on hashtag Team Jacob, which I am hashtag Team Jacob, this one has some really good stuff for us, including the best kiss in the entire series. It's Bella and Jacob and sweeping music, and they're in the mountains and the camera's going around them. It's very nice. It does have some issues. There's some casting stuff that is a little um, the actress who they had hired to play the villain in the previous movies had asked for a raise, and instead of doing that, they used that as an excuse to get rid of her and bring in Bryce Dallas Howard, who probably cost more than what the actress they had already cast was asking to be paid. Unfortunately, and this is not like Bryce Dallas Howard doesn't get anything to do here. Like this is not a good use of her talents. And then this one is also like the first Twilight was directed by a woman. The last two Twilights were directed by a gay man, and the second Twilight, the director of that did a very good job, sort of approximating the female gaze. This one feels a bit more male gazy. Like there's a very early shot of Bella that's like starts below her waist from the back, and she's in like very tight pants in a way that's like, oh, the camera is like weirdly objectified her. She's supposed to be like the protagonist of this. This is kind of odd. And like the women characters, like the mom of the Cullen family, you could tell me that she was not in this movie, and I would 100% believe it because she barely shows up. And like even in group shots, she's like barely there. But yeah, besides that stuff, this is a lot of fun.
You know my stance on the Twilight films, so yeah.
Have you seen this one?
No.
This is the one you would probably find stuff to enjoy in this one more than some
All
of the
right.
other ones.
I'll never watch it, but all right.
All right. Oh, it's my turn. Number 5 on my list is Shupa Badu. Despicable Me. I like the Minions. Okay, I like stupid stuff. Okay. So the Minions right up my alley. I liked the Minions before I ever watched a Minion movie. I played the Minion Rush game on my phone before I watched a Minion movie. So I'm Minion pilled, dare I say. But Despicable Me is undeniably the best movie of the franchise. I mean, maybe someone could make an argument for the second one, not sure, but obviously no one's going to argue for the movies past the first two. I still enjoy them regardless. But Despicable Me just has a good story and fun Minion moments. What's not to love? Yeah. It's been a little bit since I've seen it. But yeah, I do enjoy its story and I do like it a lot. And yeah, I'm not gonna deny me liking the Minions. I know a lot of people are like, I don't like the Minions. Well, they can get a life. It's fine if you don't like the Minions, but also like let some people live, like me. I like the Minions.
John, are you a Despicable Me fan?
I really enjoyed it back in 2010. But over the years, after a few rewatches and like after the many sequels, I just really outgrown it. Like I remember being really into the marketing for this first film. It's like I remember like the first teaser trailers and like being really excited for what this weird film was. And like there was like one of my early days of Facebook where like let me post the link to the trailer to my Facebook page, and this was like one of those films. And I did really enjoy the Minions in that first film, but yeah, over the years I don't know, I've outgrown this film, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I
Yeah,
just think it's still solid, but yeah,
Mhm.
I don't ever come back to this one really.
I was starved as a child, so I'm eating right now.
Eat, feast, get fat,
yeah,
become like
I
me.
do. I do remember enjoying this a lot as a kid when I saw it. And yeah, I haven't really gone back to it since, but I don't have any negative opinions of it either. I think I just get annoyed seeing the trailers for the newer ones in theaters, but I don't see those that often anyway, because I don't tend to go to a lot of the movies that they show. So yeah, I don't really have. I did, however, I did look up, and in Latin America, this was released as Mi Villano Favorito, which translates to my favorite villain.
There we go.
Yeah.
And I did also want to say recently, because Despicable Me 4 came out like last year,
Yeah.
and I was having the realization I was around the age of the middle sibling when this movie came out. I am now 26. Those characters have not aged. It's
Yeah.
just kind of weird watching the trailer and be like, oh, this character was my age and no longer is.
That's always a shame.
I mean, I don't care. It was just an
Right.
odd realization of like, oh yeah, I was supposed to relate to these characters. Now I'm watching the trailer for the new one and be like, oh, I have outgrown these characters by quite a bit. Like when I saw the second movie, I was around the age of the oldest kid.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like,
Voiced by Miranda Cosgrove, who's like
oh, I
still
did not
voicing
know
that character, I believe.
that. That does not surprise me. I'm
Uh,
surprised that they haven't aged up the kids at all. But it is
Hmm.
just kind of an interesting like anchor
Oh
in
yeah,
time.
you know what's interesting is in the fourth one, Gru now has a son. So now he
Oh.
has
Yeah,
a
because in the second
son.
one, Yeah.
and the girls still don't age.
I guess it's like comic books in that way, where like,
Yeah,
yeah, characters just have a weird relationship with time.
yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I'd just throw this out there since it seems like we're not doing a best of 2017 since that already exists. I'll say
Well,
Despicable Me 3 is my least favorite of all the movies. That one just feels
Okay.
the most fan fiction-y. Like it feels like, well, yeah, I think a different director and writers were part of it, and it, like completely throws the story off the rails, and it's wild because the fourth movie basically doesn't address anything that happened in the third one. So it's so weird. And I'm not saying the fourth one's great, but like the fourth one was, in terms of the humor and style, a return to form. Definitely not in story. But yeah, I don't know. I if you ever want to borrow my 4K of Despicable Me 4, just let me know.
I
I think
showed
I
this to
might.
you, didn't I? When I
Showed what to me?
visited this film.
No, I doubt it. Wait, no,
I
no,
feel
you
like
did.
we
We did.
watched
We
it
did. We did.
together.
Now I
Yeah.
remember. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry because I remember watching it. It might have been Hulu, I guess, and then
Mhm.
I also later showed it to my brother on Hulu as well. So I was just thinking, no, there's no way. But you came over and we watched it at my place. I kept thinking
We did.
about, there's no way I
Yeah.
went to your place and watched Despicable Me. Yeah, and
No.
do you remember? Like I was laughing like a child.
Yeah. No, you were. You were having a grand old time. I was like,
I was having a grand old time.
yep. I
Yeah,
was, yep.
yeah.
Living vicariously through you, I suppose.
Yes.
And anyway, moving on to my number 5. I have the DC Showcase. Caveat: this really isn't a feature film. It's a bunch of shorts films ranging from 10 to 20 minutes in this collection. So basically, the DC Showcase was DC's chance of like showcasing characters that wouldn't typically have their own stuff. So what we have here, this was in a DVD called Superman Shazam: The Return of Black Adam, and so the shorts in this one were what I just mentioned. Then we had the Spectre, which was kind of like a stylized as a like a 70s detective cop show with like a dark edge. Then we have the Jonah Hex, who is this cowboy bounty hunter, and then the last one was Green Arrow. Most of these characters have had their own projects since then. Green Arrow has had 8 seasons of television. We had 2 Shazam films, 1 Black Adam film. Jonah Hex had a film. I'll be talking about that later. Spectre, Spectre's the only one who's been left out. He like appears in like other stuff every now and
Well,
then, but
there's
yeah.
a movie titled about him
Is
from
there?
2015, Spectre, starring
Oh,
Daniel Craig as James Bond.
yeah, you're right. Duh, I should have known. Anyway, but yeah, no, these were really cool, like short 10-20 minute stuff showcasing these characters that were done during this time period where Warner Brothers still put money and effort into the animation. So animation, top notch. Fun little story segments. Uh, I really enjoy these stuff. I like seeing these characters do stuff, and this was like a really fun uh, little collection of shorts that they did continue to do more after this point, but less money, and they did stuff interesting. So yeah.
Well, yeah. I have not heard of these, but I am curious to see them, knowing that they're shorts. And I mean, yeah, Jonah Hex and Spectre, who I'm not familiar with, but does seem like an interesting character. So yeah, I may have to check these out.
Yeah, you own it, so
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I bought
yeah.
a collection, a digital collection of DC animated stuff. So I own a lot of movies that I don't know exactly which ones they are.
Yeah.
And I don't engage with children's fodder.
Uh Excuse me, my son. These are about like PG-13. What children are we showing this to? My goodness. What kind of heathenistic world do we live in? Moving on.
Oh. Yeah, my number 4, I have Tron Legacy,
Hmm.
directed by Joseph Kosinski. This is, of course, a legacy sequel to the original Tron from the 1980s. This is an extremely important film in my life as like to me as a young film geek. I fell in love with like the trailers and just the visual design of it. Like it looks stunning. The designs of everything are just so cool. Um, I watched a ton of behind the scenes stuff before actually seeing the movie, so I had like a sense for how they had done all of the like costuming and stuff. Got me really interested in that side of things, even more so than I had already been. I listened to the soundtrack a whole lot. I really like the soundtrack. Saw it opening weekend in 3D. Loved every second of it. This was my first celebrity crush was in this movie, which I didn't recognize it as that at the time. But then now that I'm older, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a celebrity crush that I wasn't aware of what that was. Um, and yeah, I've seen it many times since. I saw it a couple years ago. I'm planning a rewatch soon. It's not
Oh.
the most interesting story. Like it is a very typical legacy sequel story to the sense that like if you put this and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull together, put them in a blender, you have every single legacy sequel that has come since is pulling from that blender. Here we get like this is one of the first films, if not the first film, to use digital de-aging for Jeff Bridges. Doesn't look great. I think it's fine because the character that he is playing, the younger version, is actually like a digital character, so it makes sense that his
Hmm.
face is a little CGI-y. Um, but yeah, no, this is just like the reason this is on my list is the incredible visuals and then also the music. Daft Punk did the soundtrack for this, and it is phenomenal, so good. This is like if you watch this as a movie, it's maybe a little bit disappointing. If you watch this as a Daft Punk album visualizer, it's really good.
Yeah. I remember, the marketing for this film and just being I really was in awe of like the visual aesthetic. It wasn't enough to get me to go and see it. I didn't see it until COVID, unfortunately. But yeah, I think visually very cool, very well done. Story, you know, story's alright. And I'm sure we'll be talking about something like this in some other thing sooner or later. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Tron movies myself, but I intend to with the new one on the way.
Oh.
I think with the visuals, it interests me because I kind of like neon aesthetics. So I do intend to watch the first two before seeing the new one in I guess October. Yeah.
Yeah. It is really interesting that like you watch the original Tron and it is very much of its time, and then you watch the Tron Legacy and it is like the way that the technology is being portrayed feels of its time. Like that is what tech looked like in the 2010s, was all of this like sleek blacks and neons and whites.
Hmm.
Like yeah, I think of like iPhone or like Apple products around that time, and that's like that is so yeah, it's a really good style. I am curious to see the new one. Looks like it's kind of continuing in the Tron Legacy style. I am curious to see
Hmm.
if they're updating it. I will say like technology today doesn't look all that different from technology 15 years ago, just aesthetically. I guess there are probably some changes, but it's not
Hmm.
as much of a difference between like the 80s and 2010.
Yeah.
So my number four is a movie called I Saw the Devil, which I've only seen once, and like it's a disturbing movie. So um, I was disturbed after the first time I saw it, but the more I think about it, the more like it's grown on me. Um, but yeah, it's it's a different take on a revenge revenge story, at least of what I know to be typical revenge stories. Again, I struggle with the line of like how much do I tell about a story or not, but basically, a man is chasing a murderer and just it's revenge, but it's uh just the man the murderer keeps getting away and just very violent encounters, and the murderer does very heinous horrible things, um and the ending is so heavy. It definitely is an incredible ending. So yeah, it's a very heavy watch, but I think the more it's permeated in my head, um, the more I respect it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see this one. Like the poster is just so interesting. The design of it, it's very well designed. At least the posters that I've seen for it. And yeah, it seems like it's maybe of a piece with the Park Chan Wook films from around this time, the Vengeance trilogy, like Old Boy and Sympathy
In
for Mr.
fact, Mr.
Vengeance.
Old Boy is the murderer in this
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
I recognize the yeah. So I am curious to see it. I will say that like I found at least the first two of that trilogy a little inaccessible.
hmm
So I am like on the fence about, but I think I will watch this at some point.
I will say it is not the same director.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the director who's um, I think I mentioned the good, the bad, the weird
Okay,
a few
yeah,
times
yeah,
ago. So that Oriental Western. So basically, this man is just dabbled in various genres.
yeah.
Some other movies he's done: A Quiet Family, A Bittersweet Life, and Tale of Two Sisters. So like Quiet Family and Tale of Two Sisters lean into horror or are horror, and Bittersweet Life I think is more of like a gang, thriller. I haven't seen it yet. I just got a 4K of it from Second Sight, so I intend to watch it at some point soon. But yeah, the man definitely touches on various styles and genres for sure. So very interesting, like looking at his filmography.
John, I
And you
assume
know
this is,
me.
you love this one.
You
Have
know
seen it
me.
many times.
Of course, you know me. Moving on to my number 4, we have Ip Man 2, or as we like to say in America, IP Man 2. um, Legend of the Grand Master, it seems. There's a subtitle there. Yeah, so the second in this Ip Man series of films. Here, Ip Man moves to Hong Kong in an attempt to try to like build a new life for his family. And so here he tries to open up a new martial arts school, but then has to like earn the respect of the other rival schools. And so um, on top of that, there's like this whole other racism plot with like British colonizers and boxing and stuff like that, where Ip Man has to fight this boxer in this big dramatic conclusion. Lots of fun, cool martial arts stuff. That's what I'm here for. Um, so, yeah, just more of what I liked from the first one.
Yeah, I have not seen this one, but eventually I'll have to do a watch through of those.
Yeah, it's on my at least the first one's on my watch list. I think also there's a little more curiosity because if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't Donnie Yen in John Wick?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think there's after like seeing what he's done before, it's also like, oh, what else has he done?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure like these were the films that got him into the shape to perform those crazy stunts in the John Wick films. Because he learned a lot of the martial arts to do these films. So
Mm,
it's really cool what he did for his career.
hmm
Anyway,
Well, yeah, my number three is a little film titled Beyond the Black Rainbow. This is directed by Panos Cosmatos, who, phenomenal name. He's sort of a voice that's been up and coming in the horror genre. Um, it's this weird sci-fi horror film about a girl trapped in a facility and the man who's observing her. It's odd and like I haven't seen it in several years and I do need to give it a rewatch. but it's one of those things that is more about the vibes than the story. It's a little bit slower paced, but still very like odd. And I mean, visually, this thing is just incredible. A lot of sort of psychedelic type visuals, but with this very like the aesthetic of it is just so good. There's a sequence about halfway through the film that is like just this journey through like this interdimensional thing, and you're seeing like crazy insane visuals. The way that I've heard Panos Cosmatos talk about his films is that he's like inspired by like 70s and 80s horror, but specifically like the box art that you would see on the horror film, the VHS, and you would be like, "Oh, that thing looks so insane," and then you watch the movie, and you're like, "Oh, well, that was fine." But he's actually like, what if that VHS box art was the actual movie, actually
Mm.
captured that? Um, yeah, it also has just like incredible music. The score is so good, and some really solid performances as well. There's only a handful of characters here, but all of the actors are doing a really good job. And yeah, this is for people who maybe haven't heard of this one. You might have heard of his other feature, Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage. This one is slightly different, but has sort of that similar aesthetic to it, or not. I mean, not even similar aesthetic, just like the vibes kind of hit the same.
Yeah, my roommate owns Mandy, but we haven't seen it yet. So that's my
It has a
familiarity.
killer steelbook. Mandy has such a
Yeah,
good steelbook.
yeah, he has the steelbook. My roommate's a fan of steelbooks. Yeah, Beyond the Black Rainbow is in my watch list.
Glad to hear it. Hope you enjoy it when you get around to it.
Hmm.
You know me.
Heaven's Story. Okay, this movie is nearly 5 hours long.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay, so obviously, as I was looking for movies that released in 2010, a movie that's 5 hours long obviously catches my eye. And obviously, there's a part of me that likes this film for its ambitious length. I think that's the weird mental thing I've kind of been going back and forth with, is that sometimes there's a certain aspect of a movie that you like. It's whether that is almost somewhat separated from the movie, say like a genre. Oh, I like John Wick because it's action. Some people are like that. And so you can make an argument that, oh, I like Heaven's Story because it's nearly 5 hours long. I think that's a fair argument to make, and I am not going to deny that. But I will also add, I do think I like Heaven's Story because I like the movie. Yes, the 5 hours is ambitious. Yes, the 5 hours adds to what the movie's trying to do. But I also just like the movie itself. The movie is also separated into two acts. So the first 2-ish hours is one act, and the last 3 hours is a second act. So that's actually what I did. I watched it on two separate sittings with each act. I didn't know that it was separated into acts. What I did know is that uh, it is separated in parts. So I think there's like 5 parts in the first act and 4 parts in the second act. So if one sitting's too much, which I didn't do, you can pare it down to 2. If 2's too much for you, there's 9 parts. If I remember, there are 9 parts, but about 9 parts. And so actually watching the first act, it seemed like it was an anthology film, which and I was actually like, as I was watching it, I was, it's been a month. So I was kind of like, I think I'm coming to a point where I might pause. And then the first act ended like, oh, I didn't even know there were separate acts. Actually, at first I thought there were 3 acts, because I think the first act ended closer more to the 1.5 hour mark than necessarily the 2 hour mark. I forget what exactly. So I thought there were 3 acts, but no, there's 2. Um, so, but finally at the end of the first act, they kind of tie it to something that happened at the beginning. And so the second act, while there's a little more setup to happen at the beginning of the second act, it finally like starts to tie everything together. Um, yeah. So again, it's very ambitious. It's very long, but after watching it, I wanted to watch it again. So I genuinely do like this movie. Yeah, I didn't give really a lot of details about the story. That'll be for you to discover, and especially with the first act seeming so much of an anthology, I might as well, like, if you choose, because I think the selling point of this movie isn't going to be the story. The selling point is whether you want to sit down for 5 hours or not. So no amount of story, in my opinion, is going to get someone to watch this movie. It's going to be someone who wants to sit down for 5 hours. And again, with the way it's separated, you can view it as a TV show, whether it's 2 episodes or 9 episodes. So, yeah. And I think also that makes you think about, like, what makes a movie versus like a mini series / TV show. And it's the way it's released. You could have there's miniseries I've watched that are shorter than this movie. Soundtrack Number 1 comes to mind. That's 4 episodes, probably less than 4 hours. But that's released as a TV show with 4 episodes, while this is not. This is released as one cohesive project. I'm seeing a film festival logo on the poster. I forget which one it is, but it played at a film festival, and I assume for a straight 5 hours. So it's a movie, and if you're willing to tackle it, I recommend it.
Yeah, I enjoy that kind of a challenge, so I may have to find 5 hours to set aside, or maybe I would probably do the split up the viewing. I do actually find that I'm the type of person where I could take a break in a film and it can actually enhance the experience.
Mm-hmm. And I think it would with this one, if you're that kind of person. I'm not one who likes doing that, but if that works for you, then I recommend that for this. Also, I would just I would also just say presently, I watched it on Prime Video. Don't know if it's going to disappear anytime soon, but it is on Prime. Okay. Also, if you want to join a little exclusive club, only a little over 500 people have logged this movie on Letterboxd. So you'll be one of very few people who will ever watch this movie.
Or at least who have logged it on Letterboxd.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's still, like, somewhat indicative of, like,
yeah.
a general audience. Like, there's an Indian movie I watched in theaters last weekend, and it already has, like, 5,000 logs. So, again, just not a lot of people have watched this movie, is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to something that a lot of people have watched. That is DreamWorks' How to Train Your Dragon, the 2010 film, not the 2025 film. The animated
It would
one.
be weird if you put the 2025 film on your top 10 or top 5 of 2010.
I mean, it could happen. Those two are like exact same film, essentially, same framing and all
yeah, it's the same director.
Yeah. So
99% same script.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, this was like a pretty big one when it came out. I really enjoyed it. I thought Toothless the Dragon was pretty cute and cool at the same time. I enjoyed the aesthetic, the Vikings, the dragons, the story. I thought it was pretty neat. The ending had an interesting thing where there were a little bit of consequences that happened. That's cool to see. Like Despicable Me, over the years, I kind of outgrown it. I think specifically because of like sequel films, I didn't really care for the sequels as much, and so it just kind of came down the list for me. But this is the one of the films that I enjoyed the most. That's still, I think, pretty solid. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is one I saw. I believe I saw it in the theaters when it came out, and really enjoyed it. Loved the sort of fantasy, the dragon stuff, and the Viking stuff is also pretty cool. Unfortunately, in the years after, basically anytime I would go, like, our family would go to like a party with other families, and the adults wanted something to distract the kids, so they would put on a movie, and 9 times out of 10 and it was probably 10 times or 9 times. It was How to Train Your Dragon. So I think this is the most times I have seen a film that I don't own and have never owned. Because just everywhere we went, this was everywhere for like
Yeah.
5 years or so. I think I saw it at school. I saw it at other people's houses. I probably saw it at an airplane or something. Um, so seeing it that many times, kind of the magic started to fade a little bit. But yeah, I don't have anything negative to say about it beyond just that I
Mhm.
got a little bored of it.
Yeah, I don't even feel the need to rewatch it because I still remember basically the entire film scene by scene. Like it isn't. It's a It's easy film to follow, and I've watched it enough times that I don't need to watch it again. So
You could just remember it all in your head. You don't even have to watch it. You can just sit down and close your eyes.
yeah, I don't even need to watch the new film that just came out because like I still have this film in my brain memory wise. So yeah,
Yeah, I have not seen this movie. It's so interesting though, looking at the slide Jay made, how
I
much
made
I've
it.
been inundated. Oh, that you made. Sorry, I just assumed. I apologize. That Mr. JPL made, and how inundated I've been with the new one, and so it's almost jarring looking at this one. I can't lie. But anyways, I have virtually sworn off watching the new one, um, because I haven't seen this original one first. I think also just the fact that it's a virtual, you know, copy makes me less interested in watching the new one. Like I watched Snow White and Lilo and Stitch this year because they weren't carbon copies. Um, but if How to Train Your Dragon is, it makes me less willing to watch the new version. However, I do believe that the future How to Train Your Dragon sequels, the live action sequels, will deviate from the original movies. So maybe those I'd have more of an interest in watching because they'd actually be different from the sequels. Whenever I get around to those. But
hmm
yeah. Anyways, I haven't seen it yet. It's on the list.
Well, yeah.
Uh-huh.
My number two is actually I think the only film on my top 5 list that I specifically watched for this podcast in preparation. The stuff that I was watching kept just not hitting for me. But then I saw this one, and it is called A Cat in Paris. Is directed by the French animators Jean-Luc Felicoli and Alain Gagnon, and it is about a cat that spends its days as the pet of the young daughter of a police chief, and its nights helping a notorious cat burglar. And of course, those worlds collide in interesting ways, and yeah, this is everything you could want in a movie. It has a cat. It has really gorgeous hand-drawn animation. The movement in this thing is insane. It looks so good. It has like really good character designs. It has this like fun score, a lot of like jazz in it. There's some light peril elements, some like little bit of danger here for the characters to go through. Some good emotional moments, and it is a breezy 65 minutes long. 60 if
Oh,
you don't include credits. This thing moves. Any studio executive who is giving notes on any movie and saying, "Hey, you need to cut this movie down. A Cat in Paris did this in an hour. You can cut 5 minutes from your movie. A Cat in Paris does all of this stuff." Oh, it's so fun. I was so excited when I sat down to watch it. It was like, because I think it's even like incorrectly listed in certain places as being 70 minutes long. But no, it is 65 minutes, 60 without credits. It is
dang.
perfect length. Doesn't overstay its welcome at all. Just really cute and fun. And yeah, if you enjoy like cops and robbers or cat and mouse type movies, there's a lot of fun stuff here.
Yep. Adding it to the list.
Yeah, I know this through Oscar animation film history, but I have
Yes.
not gone around to seeing it. So one day we'll
I
see.
feel like you might enjoy this one, John.
I
Even just
I
for the
might.
fact that it is so short that Like, yeah, there's almost no way to not enjoy it because you are not spending a lot of time watching it. It's in
a
it.
cat.
There are episodes of television that are longer than this movie.
There are indeed. Yes.
I was I was trying to decide, do I watch this or do I watch an episode of Severance? I was like, I'm gonna watch the movie. It's like a 5-minute difference time wise. It's a 5-minute difference time wise.
Oh,
One
boy.
episode of a TV show and an entire film.
But it's
Could have said
Severance.
any other TV show though.
All right then.
Taking it off the watch list. My number 2 is another Korean film, The Man from Nowhere. That, from what I am hearing, did have a major, was a major inspiration of the John Wick franchise. Unlike the John Wick franchise, I would argue that this has a little more story. I will say, I think with John Wick, you can make an argument for it being compelling. I genuinely think you could. I also do think you genuinely can make an argument that John Wick is not compelling. I think it can go both ways. I feel like I keep bouncing a little back and forth. Not to an extreme of, oh, it's so compelling, best story. Definitely not to that extreme, but I do feel like there's elements. Regardless, Man from Nowhere is also another revenge film and very different from now I'm blanking on the name, but the devil movie I mentioned.
Yeah, I Saw the Devil.
I Saw the Devil. There we go. I almost said the devil inside me. I Saw the Devil. But yeah, so if you like the action of John Wick, but you wish it was a little slower, you wish you could connect with the story a little more, you might like The Man from Nowhere. So yeah, personally, even before I watched the John Wick movies, I just enjoyed the story of The Man from Nowhere more, and I still do. So those are just very scant thoughts. It's been a year or two since I've watched it. So yeah, definitely not as cool as John Wick is. Definitely not as fast paced as John Wick can be sometimes. But if you want a revenge story that you might actually care about, that you might enjoy The Man from Nowhere. Also, just I'd say, the actress Kim Se-ran died this year. So that's very sad. Rest in peace. There's a scandal around that, unfortunately. I don't know all the details, but yeah, very sad because she is terrific in the role here. And yeah, it's very sad to see a life cut short. Also, the lead actor, which I think Won Bin, he is in very few movies. He is actually the son in Bong Joon-ho's Mother.
Oh.
So very different characters he plays. And
Yeah.
he plays both of them very well. But yeah, he's virtually not in many other movies. So kind of sad to see. I don't know why. But maybe it's his choice. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, he it's just, I think it's very wild because, last year was Mother and this year Man from Nowhere. Very different characters, and he plays them well. So yeah, pretty cool.
Well, yeah, you've sold me on the idea of a John Wick that has a slightly better story. That sounds good to me as someone who did not care for some of the later. Actually, I don't know that I really love any of the John Wicks outside of the third one.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Oh, out of curiosity, why the third one that you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that I don't know. That would have to be. I would have to rewatch them to understand.
Do you want to though?
Not particularly.
Exactly.
I want to rewatch the third one. I did not care. We've had this conversation. I did not care for John Wick 4.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me because I feel like the third John Wick is the least story driven.
Okay.
or at least is the most compact with action sequences, I guess.
I did.
Which
That was
has
the
some of
one
my
that I saw in theaters. I
the
didn't
one
see
that
the
you almost
first two
walked
in the
out of.
theaters. No, no, the
Oh,
fourth one
oh,
I almost
oh,
walked out
sorry.
of.
Okay, sorry. Third one you did see in theaters. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
So that might have been just going to see it in the theater,
That
gave
makes
it a
sense.
little bit of a boost versus the
That makes
first
sense.
two.
Okay.
I also think like the third one is like the best that you can say. It's like, this film is like a video game because each new enemy that he
Mm-hmm.
faces like scales up to being more and more difficult until the end where he has to face this off against like the body armor ones that take a long time. That um it's a great like building up to moment where the fourth one you start with that and then you just stay the same throughout the rest of the films. um but yeah, you know me, I have not heard or seen of this film, so yeah.
Does it pique your interest?
No.
That's crazy.
Hey, I'm weird, you know. Some
Yes.
random thing will
John's
pique my
interest is
interest.
difficult. Yeah.
It's difficult to gauge, you know. I don't even know. You know.
And in one random day, he'll be like, "Yeah, I watched it."
Yeah.
Yeah, I read like a 2-word synopsis and that was like all I needed. Or I watched like a 2-second clip that caught my attention. I don't know. Something happened. And then I'm a big fan. Anyway, moving on to my number 2, we have the DC animated film Batman Under the Red Hood. This film is typically what most people watch whenever they try to dip into the DC animated films side. And it makes sense. This is a really solid DC film. It's the story of Batman trying to uncover the mystery of the Red Hood, who have very different ideologies about the no kill rule. Uh, it's deep, it's sad, uh, it's scary, sometimes violent. The opening is just very sad and gruesome, but it's a very interesting film and kind of like one of the better Batman stories. Just really interesting. I would recommend it, of course. I have a whole big DC video about how to recommend DC stuff to people. It's an hour 40 minutes long. How to watch it anyway. Um yeah, I'll leave it at that.
You know what? I can't lie. That's interesting. Added to my watch list.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is definitely one. I think this is one that was in the collection I bought. So I do eventually want to get more into the animated DC movies. And this is one that I have been aware of for a bit.
Yeah, it's also like one of those standalone ones where you don't need to watch anything else. You can just jump into
Okay.
this one. It will
Nice.
explain things for you, essentially. Sure, does it help if you had comic history? Sure, yeah, but you don't really need it, honestly. It just it just depends on how big a nerd or a freak out you are with certain characters that appear. So yeah. Yeah, so before we move on to our number ones, why don't we get into our honorable mentions?
Yeah. I have quite a few here. As per usual, I have organized these alphabetically, so don't infer any rankings from where any of these fall. First up, I have Chico and Rita. This is an animated film that follows the artistic partnership and tumultuous romance between two Cuban musicians in the late 40s and early 50s. This is incredibly gorgeous animation, really good. It lost me a little bit in the second half once they leave Cuba and are doing like stuff in the US, but I mean the first part was so good that I have to recommend it. And if the second half hits for you, then it's very good. I also have widely dismissed, widely hated the film Devil, which famously people laughed in the theater when M. Night Shyamalan's name appeared in the trailer. This is post The Happening, around the time that Avatar The Last Airbender is coming out. People were not thinking kindly of M. Night Shyamalan at this point. And I think that kind of led people to maybe dismiss this movie. It's not a masterpiece, but it's better than it gets credit for. Um, it's these people who are trapped in in this elevator, and things are going wrong, and the idea is that one of them is secretly the devil, and so you're trying to figure out, okay, who's inside, what's going on. You are seeing the reactions of the people inside to all the different events and the people outside. Just really interesting psychological stuff. Again, it's very junky. Like, this isn't, again, it's not a masterpiece, but it does have incredible cinematography from legendary cinematographer Tak Fujimoto. When I saw his name in the opening credits, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And I mean, the opening credits are phenomenal in their own right. And he finds so many good ways to like make this very contained thriller feel exciting. Um, I also have Easy A. This is fun coming of age comedy, a breakout role for Emma Stone. There is one particular sequence that has, I think it's Natasha Bedingford's song "Pocket Full of Sunshine." One of the best like uses of a song I've ever seen in any movie. Hilarious. It starts to fall apart a little bit in the third act, but I mean, most of these teen coming of age comedies do. I also have Heartbeats. This is the Xavier Dolan film, his follow up to I Killed My Mother. It's not as like astonishing a film, but it is still pretty good. I enjoyed it. Of Gods and Men, this is a French film about some monks in Algeria. There's some conflict going on. I don't remember a ton about it, but I saw it in class in high school and I really, really liked it then. So should be good, I assume. Then I have Resident Evil Afterlife, much hated again. My list here is a mix of like hated and respected stuff. Um, I love Paul W.S. Anderson as a director. I love Mila Jovovich as an actor. This is a fun, junky zombie action movie. Don't take it seriously. Have fun with it. Then I have True Grit, which is a fun little Coen Brothers Western. Haley Steinfeld, though, gives one of the greatest child performances ever. It is so good. The confidence and vulnerability that she is able to go between, just incredible. I rewatched it yesterday, so it's fresh in my brain. And then last up, I have Uncle Boonmi, who can recall his past lives. I'm a fan of Adpichapong Weerasethakul. I don't always love his films. This one I didn't quite get. I do want to see it in a theater because I think it might work a little bit better for me in an environment where I'm a little bit more locked in. But it is still like very fascinating, and I think the last 20 minutes made me reconsider things, and I want to rewatch it with that in my head.
I have not seen any of these films, so I can't talk about it.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of them except for one, which I also tossed in my honorable mentions, which is Easy A. I also paired alongside Easy A. I also have She's Out of My League. I'm kind of just referencing like any movie I saw from the year 2010. I might have missed one or two, but yeah. Um, if you want your kind of, I guess, R-rated comedy,
Easy A, I think, is PG-13.
is it PG-13?
It's
It
skirting
it's
the edge
it's
a little
skirting
bit.
the lines.
Yes, it is
PG-13 R-rated comedy. Easy A. She's Out of My League. Um, they exist. You can find enjoyment out of them if you want to or not. Obviously, if you like Emma Stone, Easy A is, you know. And then what you said, Pocket Full of Sunshine, great usage. Um, One little silly thing about She's Out of My League. The guy's family is trying to take a trip to Branson,
Oh,
Missouri. So that was so wild. I think I watched that within my first year of living here in Branson, and I flipped. I was just like, I did not see that coming at all. It's almost like a family like trying to go to New York City, but no, it's Branson. It's almost like we're going to Florida to Disney World. Like that kind of like level of preparation and excitement. It's just freaking Branson. So yeah, I think to some degree, like we just don't recognize how much Branson means to some people, but also like it's just so crazy to me. Last
Yeah.
night I watched a movie from Lee Chang Dong called Poetry. Um, The only other Lee Chang-dong movie I've seen is Secret Sunshine, which we talked, I believe, in the 2007 or 2008
Yeah.
episode. And so this is his follow-up movie. And again, it's, you know, melancholy. It's heavy. I would say with Secret Sunshine, with its themes, um, I can understand them more. But poetry, not as much, because as the name suggests, it deals with poetry. I've never been good with writing or reading. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect. And so, honestly, prior to hopping on, I did some reading. It came with a booklet. So I read through that booklet, read a few reviews on Letterboxd. There's one reviewer I really like on Letterboxd. I like reading his stuff. I also was thinking about Lee Chang-dong versus Kim Ki-duk. Kim Ki-duk is the director of movies I've talked about on here, The Bow and Time. Some of his other movies are The Isle, which I watched recently, Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring. Those are, some of his titles. And Kim Ki-duk features, outcast people with, in, very, I can't think of a good word, but, disagreeable decisions and situations and portrayed in very extreme fashion. For example, Time deals with facial reconstruction, and there's some scenes where the woman is shown videos of what facial reconstruction looks like, if she wants to change her mind. Very, 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 very graphic, like the graphic, like depiction of it. And that's the most extreme Time gets, but again, just an example of how extreme Kim Ki-duk can get. Lee Chang-dong is a little different because he is featuring, more, I guess, relatable people or situations, but still very heavy situations. Like the catalyst of Secret Sunshine is a very heavy thing that happens that, yeah, maybe not a lot of us have dealt with, but we can more easily sympathize with. And there's also a situation in poetry that's very heavy, which I didn't know going into it. I thought it'd focus on one other thing, but it didn't really actually. So that kind of surprised me. But which is completely fine. It is what it is. But yeah, he touches on very heavy things. But also, while Kim Ki-duk is very extreme, Lee Chang-dong is very quiet. Now they're both slow pace directors, but Lee Chang-dong, I honestly don't even recall a score in poetry. I could be completely wrong, but I genuinely don't recall. And it's just very much you are following our lead character as she's dealing with these situations and processing what she's dealing with. But basically, per its title, I'm not going to give too many details, but the core of the movie is she goes to a poetry class and she wants to write a poem. And so this movie is that journey. There's a different angle of this movie that has been popularized as a synopsis, and I don't think it's a great synopsis. It was the one I was familiar with, and it's not the main focus of the story. If you know what it is, awesome. If not, oh well. Yeah, I think I put it in the honorable mentions because I do. So Secret Sunshine, I connected with it more because it deals with subjects I'm more familiar with. Poetry, not as much. But even Secret Sunshine took some time for it took time for it to grow on me, and that's going to be the case with poetry. I think I just really want to talk about Minions, but so yeah, I may not be a true cinephile by not adding this on my top 5, but I made a decision I made, and hopefully this movie will grow on me, and hopefully I'll understand it more in the future.
I mean,
Um,
I have Uncle Boonmee in my honorable mentions instead of Twilight Eclipse in my top 5, so you
yeah.
are in good company here.
Yay! Two um, franchises that Disney has eclipsed: Iron Man 2 and Toy Story 3. I don't remember a lot of details about either of them, but Iron Man 2, I watched after seeing the first Iron Man, really liked it, had to get more Tony Stark in my system. Um, I'm not going to claim anything great of Iron Man 2, but I like Tony Stark, and so there's enjoyment to be had from it. Um,
Mhm.
Also, thought I'd just say I do like Iron Man 2 more than Iron Man 3. I just do. I
Ooh.
just never enjoyed Iron Man 3. Um, yeah. Toy Story 3, I don't really have an essay to give you about it, but we all know it's well loved. That was also one I took off my top 5 because I just didn't really know what to say about it. But I absolutely love the Toy Story movies. I mean, obviously, the original trilogy. Fourth one I have issues with, but I respect at the same time. But yeah, I love the Toy Story movies. 3 is really good. Two movies within the Christian realm: What If, starring our favorite Kevin Sorbet. Sorry, Sorbo. Sorry, we've been calling him Kevin Sorbet at work. I'm so sorry. But now, what is his last name? Sorbo?
Yeah,
Kevin
sorry about
Sorbo.
yeah.
Um, and then I can't remember her name off the top of my head. What the 21 Pilots? Josh Dunn, his wife,
Oh,
Disney
this
actress.
is not something I would know. I can look it up though.
Okay. But she plays like the daughter here, and then maybe another character here. It's a name that I don't know off the top of my head, but there are a few names in here, I guess. Um, when I watched it, say 10 years ago, I remember enjoying it. I would still feel like in the recesses of my head, it's probably a somewhat more enjoyable Christian film. I genuinely do not remember, so do not quote me on it. There's a little bit of a uh, "It's a Wonderful Life" ism, which also I have not seen yet, but kind of an angel trying to help a man see the error of his ways, and he comes around, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, probably maybe it probably is basic to a degree, but I somewhat recall enjoying it, but I genuinely don't remember. Did you get a name?
Yeah, is it Debbie Ryan?
Debbie Ryan. It was so funny. The second before you said it, I kind of remembered Debbie. Anyways, and then Mandy and the Cherokee Treasure, based off the Mandy books. I think I talked about Secret Tunnel a couple episodes ago. So it's just another one. I genuinely don't remember a lot, especially considering the fact that the movie deviates from the book like crazy. So the first movie and book are pretty hand in hand. This one, not at all. I remember the book decently. I read the book a few times. I don't remember Cherokee Treasure a lot, except for like the last climactic scene kind of thing. Um, I don't even I don't even know. But it's Mandy. I found it enjoyable at the time enough. Yeah, those are my honorable mentions.
Yeah, I've only seen two of these things: Iron Man 2 and Toy Story 3. I enjoyed Iron Man 2 enough when it came out. Um, I think it's all right. I do like it. Toy Story 3 is one of the few films where it actually made me cry whenever I watch it multiple
Hmm.
times. Um, I think it is the best ending of the series, and then the fourth one came out. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything to add. I haven't seen Iron Man 2 or Toy Story 3 in many years, and I already talked about ECA. I do want to eventually see Poetry, so
Hmm.
I I don't know much about it beyond what you said, so I'm curious to engage with that at some point.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think especially considering like the one thread of story that's kind of been popularized about the movie, maybe might be best to go in. line because I guess I
Yeah.
was so expecting that and almost like mentally preparing myself for it. And it's it's not to say it doesn't have impact like what you see in well, okay, Secret Sunshine I feel like is a little more one story based. It flows straight through. I think Poetry has a lot more elements, I guess. Um, and like we're still following the main character throughout the whole story, but there are like several different things that come up. Poetry is one of them, and it all culminates through that. But like we are seeing other things that are going on, but again, it culminates to it. But yeah, there was one aspect of the story I was like preparing myself for, like, okay, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and it wasn't really that prominent like I thought it was. But obviously, it's still a very underlying theme throughout the whole movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, moving on to my honorable mentions. First up, we have Megamind, which to me has had the opposite effect of Despicable Me, where I first watched it, I enjoyed it, but thought it was okay. But throughout the years, each time I revisited, I've enjoyed it more and more. And I think the same effect has happened with just like everybody else who watched it. It came out around the same time as Despicable Me, and this one kind of like lost and underperformed, but people have been coming back to it and being like, "Oh wait, this film is actually interesting and fun." And yeah, I agree. I do like the concept of this one. I enjoy it a whole lot more. I think the comedy is great. It has the superhero genre stuff, so it's like it's up my alley, I guess. Next up, we have the Jaden Smith, the Karate Kid remake of the original, quote unquote. Um, it has some great action. It's a decent all-around remake of the original story. My biggest issue is that the title's called The Karate Kid, except he learns kung fu, not karate. The film even points that out. It's like, oh, what, you gotta teach me some karate? It's like, no, here in China, we learn kung fu. So that title, cop out. I hate that they did that. Just call it the Kung Fu Kid. You would have had the same effect. Um,
Well, then
next,
it gets confused with Kung Fu Panda.
no, because it's called Kung Fu Kid. Panda's not a kid. He's a panda. This
I,
there's
I,
a
I
there's already a there's already a whole other film called The Karate Kid. That's even more confusing. That two of the same name. What are you talking about? Anyway, next up we have Predators, which I feel is a really underappreciated Predator film. I love the initial premise and like lore concept of it. It's just like a bunch of different warriors from different like armies and countries find themselves in this mysterious jungle and they have to like figure out what's happening, who's hunting them, and it's I find a lot of that very interesting. The execution could be a little better. Like they have like a whole stacked cast of like amazing people. A lot of them are very underutilized, but there's a lot to enjoy from this stuff that you can enjoy. And then we have Harry Potter: The Deathly Hallows Part One. This one is actually Deathly Hallows Part One instead of what I was saying last month. Yeah, they split the final book into two films. This is the one that I found the boring one because there's less action and more quiet, quote unquote, filler. Next up, we have Disney's Tangled. The beginning of like Disney's 3D animated princess films, that new, I don't know, genre renaissance of sorts. Not Disney Renaissance, but whatever.
yeah, the new sort of
Yeah, the
yeah,
new
yeah.
thing that they're still doing that I wish they'd just stop. Um, and then we have another DC animated film, Justice League Crisis on Tourists. If you're new to the concept of the multiverse, this is a pretty good film to get into because it's very simple and basic. You have your good Justice League and the bad Justice League. You gotta see them fight together. Um, Pretty fun, simple stuff. Next up, we have the Expendables. If you at all enjoyed 80s, 90s, early 2000s like action films with like Stallone, Jason Statham, other people. Then Expendables is like that, but like with all those people together, a lot of fun cameos and Easter eggs. The second one is the best one, but this one is fun as well. And then lastly, we have Diary of a Wimpy Kid, the live action film. I was really excited for this one. I had read the book before it was a book. It was a web comic first, um, and so when this was announced, like I was really excited. I was like all into the marketing, and I really enjoyed the film when it came out. Um, I was the proper age for it, so yeah, that's what I've watched.
Yeah, I've seen a few of these, but none of them recently enough to make any intelligent commentary on any of them.
I haven't seen any of them, so I think Jay could have more intelligent comments than I could.
I do think it is interesting that because the new Karate Kid is a mix of the 80s one and the this one, correct? The
Yes,
2010s
correct.
one. Yeah, I find that interesting, but again, I haven't seen that one in many years. So
I find that interesting too. I will see it when I see it.
yep, that's I don't know if I ever will see it, but I find it interesting.
I like that it's connected at least. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
consistency. You know that's fun. But yeah, speaking of fun stuff, why don't we get into our number ones?
yeah. My number one is just one of my all-time favorite films. A film that I have seen so many times. I have this film memorized. I can recite along with this film. This is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Of course,
Yeah.
directed by Edgar Wright, based on the comics by Brian Lee O'Malley. It follows Scott, a 22-year-old Canadian who falls for Ramona Flowers, but in order to date her, he has to defeat her 7 evil exes. And yeah, this thing, I mean, there's nothing like it. This has the like sensibilities of this era of like young adult film, like comedy films. So stuff like Juno, or even as far back as Ghost World, or a few years later and maybe a little bit older, but Francis Ha, sort of the style of it, or not style, but the sensibilities. But it is infused with this like video game comic book style that is just kinetic and frenetic in the editing and effects, and there's constantly stuff going on. It reminds me a bit of Speed Racer. It isn't digital in the same way that Speed Racer is, but it is just like the insanity of everything going on. The visuals are just, there's always something happening. There's always details in the background to pick up on. Um, it's so much fun, so rewarding to rewatch. It also
Mhm.
has just like the cast, like a whole lot of established young actors and up and comers that come out of this film. We have Michael Cera, phenomenal as the titular Scott Pilgrim, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Allison Pill, Anna Kendrick, Jason Schwartzman, Brie Larson, Kieran Culkin, Chris Evans. Some of these people have won Oscars since this movie. It's been Aubrey Plaza, etc. So many people.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, this was a box office bomb on release, but since it has grown like a really big cult following, um, I can quote this entire film from start to finish. I love it so much. The characters are so interesting. Um, the way it just like captures the vibe of being a young adult, the good and the bad, the sort of the attempts at self reflection, the way that your history, your past starts colliding with your present. It's also just like a fun action comedy with a really insane style. Yeah, I think on this most recent rewatch, what really struck out to me is the supporting cast and the way that they are so supportive of Scott, even as he is not always the greatest person to them. Um, there's just so much depth here. It's phenomenal. I love it so much. Yeah.
Yeah, this is one that you forced me and a group of our friends to watch. You know, you brought us to your house under some pretense, and then it's like, guys, we're watching this film. I'm gonna quote along as we watched it, and uh, I didn't really care for it when you forced me to watch it. I have since I have since rewatched it since, and yeah, it is a lot of fun. I see what you were talking about. I enjoyed it. So it just really goes to show, never force John to watch things. Just lead him naturally to watch it on his own, and he'll think it's
I,
fun.
I think in my defense, it was like my birthday,
It was,
so
yeah.
choosing the movie was not something I was not maniacally the way that I have it other times. I, but yeah, no, this is I don't know that I forced you to watch too many things that were not movies that we watched on my birthday.
There was a handful.
There were a handful. The Lobster and
Yes.
Manchester by the Sea, which were a miscalculation on my part, but that was also my
Yeah.
birthday.
Yeah.
No, Scott Pilgrim was the better one. Yeah, I have made so many people watch this movie, and at this point, I now have friends who appreciated it. Actually, I think most of my college friends had seen it before we watched it together. I need to see this in the theater at some point because seeing this with an audience would be so much fun. This is a fun. Again, it's insane. There is no film quite like it. You can compare it to other films, but you are comparing it to multiple other films because no single film compares to this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't just say this is like Judo. You have to say this is like Judo plus Speed Racer.
Yeah, I watched Scott Pilgrim for the first time. I'll guesstimate a year or two ago, and yeah, I genuinely could not believe how much fun this was. How much I smiled while and after watching it. Yeah, this movie is so much fun. It's so interesting because like when I think about the movie and its pieces, I'm like this. Typically, I don't think would be a movie I would think I would like, but it works so well and I really do like it. I can't help but appreciate it and like it. So yeah, this is a winner. So Jay mentioned that Scott Pilgrim's one of his favorite movies. This is also one of my favorite movies. Black Swan. This is the first movie I had ever watched from Darren Aronofsky. Um, this is I mentioned Hulu before. This was a movie I did watch on Hulu. Um, during my first year here in Branson, and I think Natalie Portman was a draw for sure. Um, Again, I've probably talked about like my journey into movies. It's just very interesting thing. Soon we'll talk about another step of my journey of movies, but of how I guess because I've always been on the outside, that's always kind of made me somewhat comfortable, like watching movies on the outside. So somewhat watching movies that are popular but not popular, and then also like a mix of different things, like She's Out of My League and Black Swan that I probably watched within the same year, um, and um, yeah. Now Black Swan isn't is popular, so it there are definitely some movies I watched that weren't popular, but I don't know, just interesting trajectory. Also watched Black Swan before I was a little more comfortable with more grisly images, as there are some that are in the beginning, or at least was a little more was a little harder for me to watch that happened in the beginning. Black Swan is one of my favorite movies of all time. It was incredibly experiential the first time I watched it. So sucked in. Absolutely just loved the experience, the movie. I don't know. Like I don't have a lot more I feel like I could add except to say it is genuinely one of my favorites. I think sometimes now obviously I think a movie needs to be good and should make sense, but even sometimes like a movie like Poetry, where maybe I was a little in my head a little too much while watching it, and I need to just be able to experience what it is and feel the emotions that are being portrayed. And Black Swan, I think, um, it's it definitely goes into the more thriller horror thing. So I don't necessarily. It's something I thought about after watching Bring Her Back. Like, is horror a cheat? Is it cheating? Is because it obviously evokes your emotions. So is it cheating to get you there? I don't. I do think at the end of the day that there are different styles of movies, there are different genres, and I don't think that makes a movie less than. But regardless, I cannot deny Black Swan was super effective for me, and I genuinely really like it. And what an experience! One of my favorite movies. It was in my Letterboxd top 4 at one point. Um, I really struggled because this is one I always like want to put back in, by just I don't know. Like if it was top 5, it'd probably be that in that 5. Which I love the fact it's just 4 on Letterboxd, by the way. But yeah, I'm always kind of like mentally scheming. How do I put it back in my top 5 on Letterboxd? So we'll see what will happen. But I absolutely, absolutely love this film.
John, have you seen this one?
No, I've always been pretty intimidated to watch this one. It just didn't particularly seem like something that was up my alley, and then the stuff that I've heard by reputation just wasn't something that I was eager to get into.
Yeah, I will say it's like the stuff in it is not the most graphic or insane stuff, but the way it is shot and framed, like there's a particular moment of violence that what I'm thinking of, like I watch a lot of violent films, so depictions of violence don't tend to stick with me, but there's one particular moment in this film that was like I still think back at it as like a very shocking moment, even though it's not like super graphic or anything. It's just the way that it happens, the way it unfolds, which can be said for the rest of the film. This is one that, I was getting into the Oscars this year, when back in 2010, so I was aware of this, as a Best Picture nominee, and just kind of like fascinated by what even is this. And I got around to seeing it when I was probably in high school, and was just blown away by it, and the complexity and the psychological horror elements are so effective in Natalie Portman's performance, like so good. And yeah, it's exploring this really dark subject matter of, art and the sacrifices people make for art, and doing it through ballet, which is one of the most physically difficult and insane forms of art out there. The way the impact that has on ballet dancers and their bodies is its own type of like body horror. So to have that like portrayed here by a director who is just very good at that like visceral stuff, um, I think often to the detriment of his films. So in this case, it is, perfectly aligned with the story that is being told. Yeah, this is just phenomenal. This would have easily made my list had you not put it on your list, Christopher. This is just incredible. I will say the most recent time I watched this, I watched it as a double feature with Barbie of Swan Lake. Insane experience for two things that are based on the same thing. They could not be more different from each other. So I had fun with that. But yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
this is just like, it is worth seeking out.
Mm-hmm.
And
Um,
it
Go
is
ahead.
worth seeking out, even if you're maybe a little bit intimidated by it, because it is a very rewarding experience, though it is like very dark
Mm-hmm.
and very heavy. So yeah, I don't know how much I could recommend it, but I do think it is like a very worthwhile film.
I have one little deviation as it relates to Black Swan. Just one of those things I think about, like what I mentioned about the horror. Is it a cheating? Is it a cheat for a movie? I think the idea of comparison. I showed this movie to my roommate, and he kept mentally comparing it to Whiplash, which to some degree I understand. It's about artistry, it's about passion, it's about self-sacrifice, um, and stuff. But they're different movies. I will say Whiplash doesn't work as well for me like it does for many other people. I really do like it. It's really good. 4 stars, yabba yabba. But I don't love it as much as Black Swan personally. He likes Whiplash more than Black Swan. And yes, movies can carry different themes, and movie comparisons will exist forever. But I also think like it can sometimes be limiting to a movie to compare to a different movie. Maybe Whiplash was based off Black Swan to a degree and expounded. And yes, definitely as time goes on, sometimes we can take more complex looks at certain topics, certain themes that maybe weren't as complex as back then. But then sometimes do not neglect the past, because the past sometimes tackles the topic more complexly than we are able to today. So I don't know, just a little thought. Yeah, I respect Whiplash a lot, and some people like Whiplash more than Black Swan, and I think that's fine. That's completely fine. And they do tackle to some degree similar things, but I think they also tackle them differently.
Yeah, interestingly, I actually do not like Whiplash, but I love Black Swan. I think you
Mm-hmm.
are right that the comparison between the two doesn't fully work. Like they are
Mm-hmm.
so different that to be pitting them against each other. I will say though, another film that Black Swan is frequently compared to that is worth checking out in a similar vein, though that one is dealing more so with fame than with artistry, is Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue, which
Mm.
Black Swan actually has some shots in it that are very similar to shots from Perfect Blue, as sort of like a tribute to Darren Aronofsky, sort of referencing Perfect Blue, um,
Mm.
which is another very heavy film, but one that is
Mm-hmm.
worth checking out if you enjoy um, Black Swan.
Well, then, let's move on to my number one, which is Christopher Nolan's Inception. I don't think we could ever talk about the year 2010 without this film. Um, yeah, this was one that when it came out, I didn't really consider going and seeing it, and then I got like some spoilers through like memes and stuff where it's like, the dream within a dream, or like the spinning little thing that's like, it's a twist, you gotta go deeper. That kind of like led me away from watching it. So it wasn't until um I was in high school and we had one English class together. I think Jay, you were part of this. Who We had a professor who really liked the film, and he showed like clips of the films to, I don't know, tell us something English related about it. But I was fascinated enough by the clips that when I went home, I remembered that we had gotten the DVD because my mom and sister saw it and they liked it. And I was like, yes, we have the DVD. So I went home and I watched it on my little tiny portable DVD player, travel DVD player, like under the sheets in my bed, like in the middle of the night. It's like, yes, it's my midnight, like after hours movie thing. I watched it, really enjoyed it. Um, that kind of made Christopher Nolan like a name to like mentally know. It's like, okay, he makes some solid films. I liked his Batman films, so here's another one of his films that I enjoyed. Um, each time I rewatch it, I always just really love just everything about it, like from the music to the characters to the themes to the visual idea about it. And it's like always one where it's like I could rewatch this film maybe once a month, once a week, if some random
Okay.
person's like, "Hey, you want to watch Inception?" I'm like, "Cool, yeah, let's do that." Um, yeah, I do have a really fond memory that I shall now lead it to you, Christopher.
Yes. So uh, I was trying to think of a silly term. I'm not going to go that way. But basically, I didn't grow up watching movies. Um, and and the movies I watched, I just wasn't really crazy about. Like, like I told you, I have, positive memories of What If, but in a general sense, like I didn't think so positively about movies. And so I meet John in 2017, was it?
Yep. Yep.
And he loves movies and I do not. And I do not know how we talked for several years, but we did. And um but so obviously John is trying to get me to watch things, and I'm a little stubborn, but also like I'm still, you know, a child in my parents' house. You know, there's a little bit of that too. But I don't recall you showing me anything before Inception. Um so
No.
to my no yeah. So finally one day you get me to come over to your place and you show me Inception. This was um late 2020, the fall of 2020. Um, so if you remember my stories, I watched Iron Man in February 21. So that's something I have to remember. But yeah, so fall of 2020, you show me Inception, and Inception was indeed like the movie that presented to me what a movie can be. Um, and yeah, completely opened my eyes. And yeah, I started a slow journey to where I am today, but definitely was a very, very, very formative movie for me in my journey of movies and what a movie truly can be. I never knew this
Mhm.
kind of storytelling could exist, and much less a movie. Um, and I just remember being absolutely mind broken.
Yeah.
I
You were
I vir-
completely silent. Like
yeah.
on the drive back to your place, it's like you had little words. You were like just thinking, like I could like hear your brain cooking. It's like, what did I just watch? What was this? I don't know.
What kind of
John, don't
sucked is
ever
right
talk to me
after.
again. I'll talk to you next week when I thought this through. And then we did.
Well,
Yeah.
what was wild is like right after that, I had like some meeting scheduled that I was supposed to lead. I couldn't. It's like I was so fried. It was horrible. It was the worst. But yeah, like I said, I never knew of this kind of storytelling, and so definitely this put me on the journey of Nolan. Definitely in the late spring, early summer of the next year, I watched Inception. I don't really remember my journey of Nolan because I don't know when I watched Dark Knight. Oh, Dark Knight was 22. It was 22. So I
Yeah.
I think Interstellar was my second Nolan. Um, but yeah, so yeah, definitely like after watching Inception, I think I showed it to my brother right before Interstellar, and so we both were like, we have to see more of this Nolan. And I had known of Interstellar by reputation. I guess I don't remember how much I knew of Inception by reputation, but definitely post Inception, then I started to recognize Interstellar by reputation. Um, so yeah, thank you, John.
My pleasure. Jay.
Yeah, I don't have as brilliant a story about Inception. I did when I watched it the first time. I was blown away by it in a similar sense of like, even though I had watched films before, I was not aware that a film could do what this was doing. Just yeah, the weird, complex dream stuff and the way it all sort of comes together in this very like emotional climax. Um, for a while, this would probably have been, if you had asked me like as a teenager what my favorite movie was, I would probably say either Inception or The Matrix, which very like teenager movies to be your favorite movie. But yeah, yeah. I will say when I recently rewatched this for John and I covered it on Binging Barbie, the emotional climax didn't hit me as hard as the one for Interstellar did. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, no, this is still like just an incredibly well made and interesting film that is secretly or not so secretly about filmmaking. There's some good analysis that people have done
Hmm.
about that is worth looking into. And yeah,
Hmm.
also one of the like best endings of all time that people maybe
Yeah.
spend a little bit too much time arguing over another time, sort of considering why it ends that way. Um, but yeah, no, incredible film. John and I did a podcast about it, so if you are curious to hear more of my thoughts, that we talked about it for probably an hour and a half at least. So
Yeah. We also talked about the rest of Nolan's filmography, so
yes.
check out that little mini series that we did. Lots of fun. I did some funny voices for a couple of those, so yeah. Well, I know that we've had some great greats. Now let's get into the low lows with our
What
worst
sucks is that
films.
these are high highs that we were just talking about.
Yeah. Now we're entering
I
like the
think.
lowest of lows as
Oh my
well.
goodness, John.
Yeah. I
Anyways,
feel like people might have, after I put Devil in my honorable mentions, people might be sort of questioning if I'm just like an M. Night Shyamalan fan to a way that has blinded me. And maybe I am. I love his films a lot, even though like Devil is just produced and story by him, but it has a lot of his style in it. Um, so just to prove that I have a little bit of perspective on M. Night Shyamalan. My least favorite film of the year is The Last Airbender. M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender. I don't hate this as much as some people hate it. I feel kind of bad putting it on my list here just because it is so like this is the movie that people hate. And so it feels a little bit basic in a way that I don't like being, but it's kind of undeniable. Um this is after The Lady in the Water and The Happening. M. Night Shyamalan really needed a win. And his daughters introduced him to the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, and he became a big fan of it, really loved it, and he thought he could make a movie about it. Unfortunately, this is one of the worst mismatches of filmmaker and material that I have ever seen. Shyamalan's best films tend to be about ordinary people stuck in extraordinary situations. So, like Signs, it's like, hey, here's this family, alien invasion. What are they going to do? Or The Sixth Sense, hey, here's this ordinary kid, but he sees dead people. What is he going to do? Um, Chosen One narratives don't quite work in that same way. And I think a lot of the disconnect comes from that. There's also just like, this is trying to take a season of television and condense it into like an hour and 40 minutes. There just isn't enough time. And the characterization just there, yeah, there isn't enough space for the characters to be interesting or to win you over as an audience or to like get into any of the lore. Um, there's very little room since this is like a kids film and Shyamalan is known for like his tension and thriller aspects. Like there's no room for that. It's just it doesn't work, and I don't know if it ever could work. I haven't seen the Netflix series, but it seems like that is a bit of a dud as well. Um, Maybe this is just something that can't be adapted out of the original medium that it was in. But this is not a film that works on pretty much any level. I will say though, people hate on the visuals based on a couple of clips. Overall though, the visuals are really fantastic here. There's some really good action set pieces, some really good designs, and like the CG work. Again, there are a few clips, those clips are very bad. The earthbenders, with there's like 15 of them and they move a small rock, not good. The other visuals are pretty good though.
Yeah.
Like the way it portrays the
I
bending is
Yeah. I really liked the animated show, and so this is always like one where it's like, ah, I like this show. I should on principle just watch this because it's related to the show that I liked, but I always just put it off because I know that I'm not really gonna like it, or I'm always gonna be disappointed by it. So I haven't seen it yet. So one day I'll sit down and go through the live action stuff, but so far I have not.
I will say there's no reason to watch this.
Right.
Like there is nothing here for you or
Right,
anyone.
which is also why I haven't watched it since. So
Yeah, for perspective, John will watch pretty much anything that is tangentially related to something like a franchise that he is invested in. So the fact that John has not sought this out yet speaks to its reputation.
yeah, 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 and this is a reputation that I've known since before I even watched the show. So yeah.
I personally haven't even seen the show yet, so I mean it's on the list. But just like Jay, I'm more about the movies than about the shows in my career.
That just makes me so sad. I'm the only one who likes films. I'm like, yeah, this year there's some good seasons of television. If this were like a top 5 show podcast, I'd be like, yeah, here's this show, here's this show. Nobody else watches shows, so I'm by myself. I can't do any of this.
Well,
Anyway,
the culture is kind of show driven. It feels like.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of TV
Yeah.
talk out
So
there.
so find some new friends.
Find some
moving
friends who are.
on.
Yeah. So and obviously I haven't watched this film, but yeah, I am definitely very aware of this movie's reputation. Um, yeah. Which I guess not seeing the show, it's funny to me. But probably maybe once I watch the show, maybe I'll feel more offended. But I guess it is a little sad because some people think too much about Shyamalan based off this movie.
I think his reputation is not entirely unearned. I like The Happening more than most, and I actually do like Lady in the Water, which we have talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he is a cilantro filmmaker that you're either going to vibe with his stuff or not. And even if you
Mm-hmm.
vibe with his stuff, The Last Airbender just does not work.
Mm-hmm. All right, my worst film. I considered putting Camp Rock 2 because I just don't care for Camp Rock, but I also don't have a lot to say about Camp Rock 2, and I think I already had Camp Rock at the bottom before. I don't remember. I put a movie called Red, which I will say I have a little bit of a bias against before even watching the film. Actually, also funny, there's also another movie named Red that released in 2008. Also funny, Brian Cox is in both movies.
I did not realize that they had cast members in common. That is funny.
There's one of my favorite bands is named Red, and so I think I got annoyed because I think like the shopping platform affiliated with Spotify, which you can't remember the name, like I would go on there looking at the merch, and then sometimes DVDs of Red would appear, and I would just be really annoyed. Or sometimes you'd search for Red, and the movies would appear and not the band. So I think I do have a bias against any movie named Red. I apologize. There's one director who has like a series of movies called Three Colors. One of them is Red. I don't have a
Yes.
bias. I don't have a bias against that movie.
Yeah.
I do want to watch those movies. Anyways, but yeah, this movie is called Red. Stars Bruce Willis, which if you like Bruce Willis, awesome. I don't think I've seen any other Bruce Willis film, so that doesn't hold too much of a oh my gosh, Bruce Willis for me. Obviously, he passed, right?
No, he's
Or
still around.
he's still alive.
Yeah.
He has. He's definitely past stage of career, so obviously that's sad. So I think to some degree you can think of a movie like this and be like, it's wonderful to have a relic of the man's past. But so, but that's for me. That's almost like just in theory. This movie has some people who are retired who go back into the field for a mission. For what I don't remember, here's the thing. I guess because I've recently watched the John Wick movies. That's kind of been in my head a little more, and yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the John Wick movies, but maybe I appreciate John Wick a little more because maybe there's a little more of a serious tone, and Red isn't that serious, but I also like don't find a lot of enjoyment out of it. Are there some enjoyment to be had from it? Yeah, Helen Mirren with a gun, that's kind of cool. Can't lie. But I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world. There's just not a lot here for me. Not a lot here that I enjoy. Not a lot that I find a lot of worth in. Um, I do have the Red collection, so I will probably watch the Red 2 before we get to that year, which I think is 2012. But yeah, I don't really care for this movie. Like, yeah, there are elements to enjoy, but that doesn't always make a movie worth watching, in my opinion. So this will be up the alley for some people, and it's not up my alley. So unfortunately, it is what it is. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I have not seen this one. I have been aware of it for a while, but have never got it around to seeing it.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I've never seen it, so maybe one day. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on to my least favorite film of the year, we have Jonah Hex. So yeah, earlier in this list we had the DC Showcase, which featured like a 10-minute short of Jonah Hex. But also this year we had a live action film called Jonah Hex with Josh Brolin. And let me tell you something. No, I had no idea that this film came out when I was looking through DC stuff. I was like, what? There's a Jonah Hex movie? I don't think anybody who knows of Jonah Hex knows that this film exists, because it's not a great film. I think the story itself is alright for a 20-minute episode of something, but like not for the hour or something long that this film is. It's stretched out, and it just doesn't quite fit the what we're trying to do. The editing is just so it's really rough, especially during action scenes. Like, it's really hard to follow anything that's going on. um you know, to be honest, like, there is some enjoyment out of it. Like, there is a fun cast here. You know, you have Michael Fassbender, you got Josh Brolin, there's Megan Fox being being Megan Fox.
Do you
So,
know which cast member is also in Red? John Malkovich appearing in both of your picks here.
Yes. This film is not the most unwatchable, but I'm not going to go out of my way to really watch it, nor would I even recommend it. If I want to say watch something Jonah Hex related, watch the DC Showcase short, watch a couple episodes of some animated shows, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend this. It also did like some weird things to the characters that I don't know why they decided to do this, but they did. Also, Will Arnett is in this film, and there's one moment where they say "fire at will," and it just like, yeah, Will Arnett. Anyway, yeah, not a great movie. It's also really forgettable as well. So there you go. There you go.
What a way to end our conversation about 2010.
This is Josh Brolin. I also noticed Josh Brolin was like in another Western film in True Grit. This is the other
he was in
that.
True Grit.
So anyway, I assume none of y'all have seen this film.
No,
I have not. I have been curious to watch it just as like at one point I had a goal to see all of the Marvel and DC films ever released. And I've slowly been chipping away at it, but it's not like something I am actively pursuing at this point.
Well, hey, if you ever want to go that route, I have this brand new video uh, about introducing stuff within
Yeah,
DC.
good.
It has like 90% of everything DC media related. There's like maybe a couple obscure animated stuff I might have forgotten about. Um, so check that out.
DC Lego
Um,
Super Women or whatever that one is.
I've not included any of the Lego ones
Oh, okay.
for
Okay.
reasons. I don't know. It was this was a list I made back years ago. Anyway, that's whatever. But yeah, this is all we've got for this year. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add to this.
What are we
Solid year.
looking for in 2011?
I mean, 2011 is at least like, I think it's seen as like a slightly yet lesser year, but personally, I do think there are some like really interesting films being released.
Yeah, I've always had that same feeling where it's like, oh, 2011. Yeah, not a lot of films that I care about, but the ones that I do like are interesting, to say the least. And we'll talk about that next month. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. That's all we have, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.